10 random magic cards rated day 111. Let's see what we get to start our week here. It is a forest. All basic lands get a 5. They don't count, and that's pretty good art by Noah Bradley. I like the contrast there. But actual first card of the day is Grim Discovery from Zendikar. This is 2 mana. 1 and a black for a sorcery. Choose one or both. Return target creature card from your yard to your hand, and or return target land card from your graveyard to your hand. So 2 mana, draw 2, kind of, right? Like 2 mana, put 2 cards into your hand. So it's not terrible, but it's really not the churn that we're looking for most of the time. Although I think certain like combo or just like land-centric decks could use this, right? And then Aftermath Analyst kind of pile, Alumra pile. These are standard cards. So Splendid Reclamation pile, right? It's this stuff that cares about lands. Life from the Loam that has an important creature or 2 that it wants back. I don't know. You might consider the card, but I still don't think it's very good at the end of the day. So even in the decks that want it, I'm not sure it makes the cut. So I'll give it a 3.886. 3.886. Sure. Sounds about right. Next is Soul of New Pyrxia. Wow. Okay. So you were originally printed in, Magic 2015. That sounds right. You can get this for very cheap right now. 6 mana of any color for a 6/6 artifact creature that's also an avatar with trample. Sure looks like Hellish Norn, doesn't it? Just throwing that out there. But anyway, 6 mana, 6/6 trample. 5 mana activated ability. Permanents you control gain indestructible till end of turn. Another 5 mana activated ability, but this one also requires you to exile Soul of New Pyrexia from your graveyard. Permanent you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So altogether, actually very slick. This is pretty good, man. 6 mana is kind of a lot, right? But at least you're getting a huge body lady with the trample, and it's an artifact if that matters to you. Obviously, if you can use the activated ability, you're probably doing okay. You know, it's not even just this thing gains indestructible. It's permanents you control. So whether they're trying to sweep you or you're attacking into combat and don't want to lose your guys, or they swinging on you and you just got this threat of activation up, all of this costs like so much mana, but it's probably worth it to keep the card up like a good bit of the time. So even when it dies, you know, it's got a threat of activation out of your yard. I just like it, man. I've always liked this card. I like all the souls from Magic. I think they all are all from Magic 2015, but these are all sick cards, man. They never really saw a whole lot of play in standard, but they're cool. I will give this a 5.6. No, I will give this a 5.86. A lot of 8.6s today, but it is what it is, man. Let's see what's next. We have got Gil Reain, Dundane Protector. Probably messed all that up. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature. It's a human noble. You can pay 2 and tap her to exile another target creature you control. You may return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If you don't do that, at the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a vigilance counter and a lifelink counter on it. So this is neat, right? There's always been 2 ways of blinking things. You blink them and they come right back immediately, just then, at the same time. Or they blink and come back at the beginning of the end step. And a lot of the time, it can be better to make them come back in step. You know, if your opponent plays sweeper or something like that, then make it come back in step. You'll lose your Gil Reain, but whatever. You know, make the creature come back in step, and it'll miss the sweeper. But if they just cast like single target removal, boom, exile the guy, comes back right then and there, and you get your ETB trigger. So really cool. And, you know, if you wait till the end step, getting a vigilance and lifelink counter is probably going to be worth it most of the time. I will say, a 3 mana 2/3, even in commanders, not really like where you want to be a lot of the time, but this seems like a fun commander if you can like keep up the mana for it and make sure it always has something to do. So kind of like it. Just in the 99 of like blink decks, it looks okay. So kind of a fan, dude. I'm going to give this, because it's easy to kill, relatively slow, right? I'm going to throw a 4.82 at this. But that does not mean that I think that it's bad. I just don't think that it's like amazing. You know, it's just keep it going here to Vea The Night Cloud. I think we've looked at this card. Have we looked at this card before? I don't know now. This is 6 mana. She's so cool, dude. For a blue and a black. Did I actually, I feel like this might be a card I've written down to buy. I think we have done this card before, but Yeah, 6 mana, 4/4 legendary creature with Intimidate. Other things you control have Intimidate. And whenever it or another creature you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life, is the whole read on the card. And I like every bit of that. It can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it. It shares that ability with everything on your side of the table. That's gross. And if they do want to kill your guys or sweep, or you want to sacrifice your dudes or something, this gives you like a blue-black aristocrats plan you could play on. But 6 mana is a lot. All that. I have rated this card before, and I'm not sure what I rated it, but I just like it. I do like this card. We'll move on to Bleak Coven Vampires. This is from Scars of Mirrodin. It costs 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 4/3 vampire warrior with Metalcraft. When it ETBs, if you control 3 or more artifacts, target player loses 4 life, you gain 4 life. That's a good ETB trigger if you can like blink it over and over. This is actually like kind of abusable. Really, 5 mana is a lot. Sure, but we've already seen a lady that can blink this in this video, so that's cool. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. Play the lady, have a bunch of artifacts, play this. But altogether in Commander, I think like just with mana rocks and stuff like that, you could fairly easily have, 3 artifacts out. Especially if one of those artifacts helps you blink it, right? Like that would be a nice way to use the slots in your deck. I don't know, I'm just kind of into this. I am just a little bit. I don't think it's very good. I'm going to give it like a 3.8. No, I'm going to give it like a 3.94, a 3.944. There we go. That way it can't at all be rounded up to 4 because I don't think the card is good. I think it's mostly like really drafty, but I am really intrigued by the idea of like blinking this a bunch of times. I think it might be really, really cool. But next is Orchi del Artiglio di Ferro over here. Actually, Ironclaw Orcs from the original sets. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 Orcs that can't be assigned to block any creature with power greater than 1. But you don't worry about that because it's not going to block. Card is not going to block. It's in an aggressive deck, and I know that it sounds like I'm talking nonsense. But I've actually been waiting to get on this card for a while. I've got a whole video about Ironclaw Orcs and sort of the context of power creep. That I did years and years ago at this point. I'm not even sure how good that video is because it was a while back I did it. But I just wanted to make the point in that video that Ironclaw Orcs was, at one point in time, a, if not playable, then played Magic card. The deck, Sly, which is just mono-red aggro, but we didn't have like a just pure, fast mono-red aggro deck when Sly was first handed to the player who would play it in a world championship or pro tour or whatever. Paul Sly is the one who gave the deck its name because, Sly, but he didn't play it. He didn't play it to prominence, right? That was somebody else, but still, Sly is an interesting deck in Magic history because you'd think that we would have had like a real mono-red aggro deck before then, but we didn't. As a consequence of like what creatures looked like back then, Ironclaw Orcs was the preferred 2-drop for that deck because it's a 2 mana 2/2. And red just did not have a Grizzly Bears. Red did not get Grizzly Bears. It got, 2 mana 2/1s and 2 mana 1/2s and stuff like that. But very likely almost never 2 mana 2/2s. So for a while, this was just the best stat line on a 2 mana creature that mono red could have. And I find that fascinating. That a card that just looks like draft garbage was actually one of the more important pieces of one of the more important decks in the history of Magic, right? So just a fun little story to go with Ironclaw Orcs. Really, man. But I want to give it an honorary 5. But it's obviously not good. It's just not good, man. I have to give Ironclaw Orcs like a 1.6 in the modern context. But just know, and I'm glad I finally got to tell some of the story again, that this card was like real. This card was in actual decks for a while there. But we'll move on to Mtg Mortars. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery that deals 4 damage to a creature you do not control. But you can overload this for 6 mana, 3 and 3 red. If you overload it, you change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So each creature you don't control takes 4 damage. This was originally printed in Return to Ravnica. And you can get it for relatively cheap, but it still fetches, an above 20 cents price tag or whatever. It's like 50 cents to go get most versions of this card. It's still pretty good. This is still a pretty decent card. As far as overloading goes, it's not like Cyclonic Rift or anything, but it's pretty good. There's not a whole lot of like amazing red sweepers. I'll say that. Plus, this will deal damage. And that might be a thing that you want. You know, this is boosted a good bit by some of the stuff that red does to increase non-combat damage. There's a bunch of cards like that. So Mtg Mortars doesn't have to just do 4. Sometimes it can do 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a lot of things that double non-combat damage. But yeah, this is just a solid card that can take out one important permanent, but if you draw it later or you want to wait, blow up a bunch of stuff, and it's one-sided. And that's the real like secret to the sauce on this card, is that it's never going to kill your stuff. And that's unbelievable, actually, in a game of Commander, too. So I'm going to give this like a 5.7. And I am 100% sure. Are you sure about that, Dev? Yeah, I think that that's right. I really do think that's right. But we will move on to Manalith over here, originally printed in Magic 2012. The 3-mana rock. That's all it does. Just 3 mana for an artifact, tap for a mana of any color. That's all it does. That's all it has to do. Nowadays, we really want a Manalith with upside, don't we? I'm going to have to give Manalith like 3.5. I really am. Rocks aren't bad, right? They're not, obviously, especially like 2-mana rocks, 1-mana rocks, 0-mana rocks, Moxen and stuff. They are great, even. You know, I've given the diamonds like a 5.5 in these videos before. It's because they cost 2 mana. When you get to 3 mana, you really need to do something besides just that to be playable. You know, you'll see me give things like Coalition Relic and cards like it, you know, well above a 5 as we move through this series, but this is not even close. Not even close. But we'll move on to what I think is actually a bonus card, but we've got some time to spare today. This is Flatsome and Jetsam from Murders at Karlov Manor. Flatsome on the left side here is 1 and a Simic hybrid for an instant, mill 3 cards, then investigate. Jetsam is 6 mana, 4 and 2 Dimir hybrids for a sorcery. Each opponent mills 3 cards, then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile the spell instead. So I actually think this card is better than it gets credit for in Standard right now. I really don't think this card is bad. You know, self-mill decks might want to play it, although you could argue there are better things to play. Picklock Prankster and Founding of the Third Path and stuff. You know, there's a few things in Standard. Moment of Peace, Moment of Truth, something like that these decks tend to play to fill their yard with creatures. Jetsam, on the other hand, is a little bit overpriced and dependent on what your opponent's doing, but I think it's pretty easy to get something good off of this. You get to cast any spell, so creature, planeswalker, whatever, those work too. It doesn't have to be instant or sorcery. And, you know, a lot of decks play like Atraxa, like Overlords, and just huge stuff that you probably do want to hit. Sheldrids and Archfiend of the Dross and Unholy Annex and blah, blah, blah. So I honestly think the Jetsam half of this is kind of very slick depending on what you're playing against. Note that you don't have to recast a thing that Jetsam hits. Right? It doesn't have to recast one of the things that it mills. It can just recast any spell from their graveyard. So, seems all right, dude. I like this card, but I can't really score it super high. Let's give it a 4.6. So I think that's about what it deserves. A decent little split card. It really is, man. But that is all we have got for today. Join me tomorrow where we'll do this again. And then the next day where we'll do it again. The next day we do it again. And the day after that we do it again. Join me for the next, I don't know, 25 years. I hope, you know, see if we can keep it going, guys. Love you. Bye.